All right, let's go ahead and get started with today's broadcast. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us for today's IOUG WebCenter SIG webinar, Oracle WebCenter Content and Imaging Product Roadmap Review with Marcus Diaz, Senior Principal Product Manager at Oracle Corporation. My name is Alexis Kolak, and I am the Education Manager for IOUG. I'll be moderating today's session, and I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to share this information with you. As I mentioned, today's webinar is brought to you by our WebCenter SIG. I strongly encourage you to become a member of the WebCenter SIG online today if this content is of interest to you. This is a great way to connect with others in the field over their shared interests, and in the community, post relevant blog articles, share thoughts, and have open discussion forums. You can find more information about the WebCenter SIG by visiting www.ioug.org/SIGs. And now to introduce our speaker for today. With us we have Marcus Diaz. Marcus has been with Oracle since 2010 and came to Oracle as part of the BEA acquisition. He's worked on the product management teams for WebLogic Portal, WebCenter Portal, WebCenter Content and Imaging products, and Oracle's Document Cloud products. He is the lead product manager currently for the WebCenter Content and Imaging products. Before we begin, I would like to remind the audience to please feel free to submit questions throughout the event via the question chat box on your GoToWebinar toolbar. Our speaker will leave some time at the end of today's presentation to address those questions, and I'd be happy to help you if you're experiencing any kind of technical issue. At this point, I would now like to turn the call over to today's presenter. Please go ahead, Marcus.
Thanks, Alexa. And as the introduction said, this is Marcus Diaz from Oracle Corporation on the product management team with the WebCenter product family. And it's a pleasure to be here today. We've been looking forward to re-engaging the IOG Special Interest Group for the WebCenter product family. And this is one of the first of a series of seminar on roadmap updates that we're going to be doing from my product team as well as other product teams in the future. Leading up to Open World. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started and jump into the presentation. Most of the information presented today is about releases that have already occurred, and I'm going to be doing a recap so that you have a good understanding of what was entailed in those releases that we've worked hard over for the last several years. There will be one kind of roadmap look ahead in terms of our Patch Set 3 release, and as such, while we think we're fairly firm on the scope of that release, it's quite possible that it may change, and hence the safe harbor statement. So let's go ahead and do a timeline overview. There's a lot of detail in this eye chart that's about to come up, but it'll give you a feel for the sequencing and the pace of the releases that we've had. And that's the first part of the agenda here. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on the sub-bullets, but I want to talk about the timing of the releases, and then I'll drill down into the roadmap recap for 11G and 12C products in terms of what's been released and what's upcoming for our PS3 release. And then I'm going to quickly conclude with just a brief overview of WebCenter and the Oracle Cloud. And this isn't an Oracle Cloud pitch, go buy our cloud products, but rather an introduction to show you how you can leverage your existing WebCenter content on-premise investments and interact with some of the cloud capability. So, brief architecture review. What is the WebCenter Content and Imaging Platform? It really is a suite and an ecosystem of products and services that allow you to interact with the broader touch points in your enterprise organization. At its core, we have the high-value features and services and the breakout products. We have WebCenter Enterprise Capture. We have WebCenter Imaging. We have the built-in archiving and web content capability and records and document management and digital assets. All of these are in our core foundation of WebCenter content as well as the add-on capture and imaging products. And with those, we can interact with a wide variety of systems, including not only portal presentations, but mobile and other, deeper third-party or product integrations with the other deeper products in the Oracle suite around JD Edwards, Siebel, and PeopleSoft. Let me just leave it there and kind of move on to the roadmap overview. 11.118 is as far back as I'm going to go back in time. That was released in August 2013, and we had a lot of UI improvements there that I'm going to drill down into. And subsequently, after that initial release, leading up through through 2014 and 2015, we did a number of MLR releases that were a mixture of bug fixes as well as continued enhancements and improvements into the content UI. 11.119 was released in May of 2015, and again, as you'll see in the recap coming up, we continue to improve the user experience and digital experience and the capability in that product, as well as our capture and imaging product lines. And that's also where we did our first integration support for our hybrid ECM integration that allows WebCenter content on-premise to integrate with the Oracle Documents Cloud Service in that .9 release. In the last calendar quarter of last year, 2015, we released the first 12C drop of the WebCenter and imaging product line. That came out right around Open World last year, and we really had a fair number of enhancements in there, again around the extended user experience, and also starting to do some infrastructure enhancements to continue to improve the maintainability of the products at a kind of fundamental level. We started some architectural consolidation in the enterprise capture and imaging product line that I'll talk about when I do the 12.2.1 recap. We just came out with the PS1 release of the 12C release, 12.2.1.1, and just for numbering purposes, the last fourth digit in our dot numbering scheme indicates a full patch set release. So 12.2.1.10 was the GA release of WebCenter content and imaging, and this 12.2.1.1 release is what we're calling our patch set 1 release, which came out this June, and I'll be covering some of the dependencies and things that were released there. And then planned is our patch set 3 release for sometime in calendar year 17. We're still locking down the timing on this. It could be in the second half of the calendar year. It could go into the third quarter or fourth quarter. That has yet to be locked down. So let's drill down into some of this and get into the recap. So going back to the .8 release where I was talking about our improvements in user experience, one of our big pushes in .8 was to provide an alternate user interface to the content that's stored in the content server, and this was based around Oracle's ADF technology. This was not intended by any means to replace the existing native UI. That we know a lot of customers have the native UI in operation and have a lot of customizations around that. Just to cut to the chase on the native UI, it is planned to stay in the product for the foreseeable future. It's in the 12C releases. We have no plans to remove it, so you're not forced to move to the content UI. You can take advantage of this if it fits the use cases of some of your users in your organization. And our goal in this content UI was really to hit that core kind of 80% around just core document management. We weren't trying to replace 100% of the functionality. We really wanted to nail the organizational aspects of content management and interacting with it through the web UI. So we added the concept of enterprise libraries in this release, which are also available in the native UI as well. Sorry, I keep fighting with this dialogue. Let me get this squared away. Okay, and we really wanted to, like I said, center the functionality around the core, around document management and easy interaction. The other thing that we added in the content UI was an integrated document viewer, so that without leaving the browser, you can view the documents, the pages in a document, whether it's PowerPoint or a Word document, etc., and use the built-in document viewer to look at those documents. When you invoke it, it actually comes up in a separate tab, so you can interact with the document as well as continue to browse the folder tree from the original tab that you navigated to it from. It is integrated, the new document UI is integrated with the desktop integration suite, which now supports both. When you configure the desktop integration suite, you can configure it to use either the native UI or the new content UI in terms of its interactions. The other thing that we did in .8 was release our first set of mobile applications, which allow a conduit into the content server from a mobile or tablet device. We support iOS and Android devices. and it makes for an on-the-go experience in terms of accessing documents and even taking them offline on your mobile device if you're going to be getting on a plane or someplace where you don't have connectivity. Use of the mobile device implies opening up a conduit into your content server, where if you have your content server protected behind a firewall, then you would need to open up access to those or provide some type of VPN access from your mobile device into your corporate infrastructure to use that. We do have an enhancement down the line here that I'll talk about that facilitates some of that remote access as a mobile access management wrapper. I'll get to that in a little bit. Another thing we did in the .8 release was spend a lot of time improving the enterprise manager metrics that are monitored in the system. We really added, as you can see here on the summary on the left, 11 new major metrics categories, 22 total metrics for the WebCenter Content Core Server. For the inbound refinery, we added 6 major metrics categories and approximately 20 to 40 metrics. That 20 to 40 kind of flexes dependent upon what you have being checked into the system. And then for the WebCenter Enterprise Capture product, we added quite a few metrics categories and over 50 individual metrics into the system. So all of these are available through the Enterprise Manager integration, and it gives you a real good status view of what's going on in the system. The other thing we did from Enterprise Manager perspective is that we centralized some of the configuration management. So basically, a lot of the things that you would normally have done through the administrative content UI interface, you can now do directly through the Enterprise Manager interface instead. Again, both are there. It just makes it a little more convenient if you're using Enterprise Manager to do the monitoring, to manage some of the configuration items. So that was .8. Let's talk about .9. Some of the key highlights we did there was to expose the digital asset management functionality that was available and continues to be available in the content UI through the native UI. So again, continuing to improve the user experience around our investment in the content UI to achieve parity in certain areas with the native UI. What you can see there on the left is digital asset management, and so if you are using the digital asset management system in the content server and have renditions, those are now available in the content UI, as you can see there in the screen cap. We also did some minor usability enhancements, something called pinning, which basically lets you in the content UI again navigate, set up a sort list, maybe navigate down deep into an enterprise folder, and then pin that view, and then basically treat it as a sophisticated bookmark that saves that navigational state so you can quickly get back to it. So think of it as a sophisticated bookmark. The other thing that we did in .9 is that we added folders on the right capability so that those now show up in your navigation. As you're navigating through the folder tree on the left, you'll now see folders on the right as well, in addition to the documents that are currently in the folder that you've navigated to. Kind of a stepping stone for us for one of our sister products, WebCenter Portal, was framework folder support. And WebCenter Portal in the .9 release was their first stepping stone to supporting framework folders. Framework folders is the alternate foldering technology that you're probably aware of in lieu of Folders G, which continues to be in the product and is in the 12C releases as well. Framework folders is a bit more performant, and it is what we are using in the content UI, so that's a prerequisite as worth mentioning, in that if you want to use the content UI, all the foldering that you're seeing here in the content UI is based on framework folders. If you have Folders G turned on, you'll need to migrate to framework folders before you can take advantage of the new content UI if you so choose. Here's a little deeper screen grab of the digital asset management functionality that was exposed in .9. Here you can see on the right part of the screen that this JPEG image was checked in and a rendition set was applied, and so here's all of these individual renditions. And similarly, the functionality that was available in the native UI, you can gather up a select set of those renditions like I've done here, put them on the what used to be in the native UI, or what's called in the native UI the content basket. Here we call it the renditions clipboard, and then you can can manipulate the renditions clipboard to either download it as a zip file or drill down into the clipboard for convenience. So that was a brief overview of 11G. The other thing I didn't mention in those last parts of the 11G update is we did have some DIS and mobile updates, and actually those will be touched on here in the 12C roadmap. DIS and the mobile applications kind of come out in between the releases, so right after 11.119 was released, we did come out with a series of mobile and DIS updates that you're going to see reflected here. They were actually 11.119 BP releases, not a full patch set release, but a BP update that was intended to support the 12C releases as well as those final 11.119 releases. So our themes for 12C are kind of an extension of the themes that we had for our 11G releases, which was to continue to improve the operational efficiencies of the product, make our deployments easier to maintain, and try and decrease the IT infrastructure and burden and footprint of the products, and then also to continue to improve our user experience. And that means improving the content UI and continuing to improve the desktop and mobile experience. Little bit of an eye chart here. So with the 12.2.1 release, what you're seeing here is an updated slide that's showing the platform certifications that our 12C GA release, which again, as a reminder, came out around Open World last year. And you can see that we added support for various operating systems to keep them current, dropped support for some of the older versions of those same OSs, and generally tried to keep move the platform and client certifications forward with these releases. So I'm not going to go into everything specific here, but you'll notice that we pretty much kept current on the latest releases of Solaris, HPUX, Oracle, and Red Hat Enterprise Linux, etc. So in 12.2.1, one of the things that was missing with our framework folders implementation that was available in the folders G capability was trash support, personal user trash support. So that was added as a server-side implementation and then exposed in the native UI in the 12C GA release, the 12.2.10 release. You have the capability to turn it off and on, and again, it's user-based trash support, so if a user deletes a content item, they can go into their personal trash and recover it. Another nice content UI enhancement that was coming as part of part of our infrastructure consolidation around consolidating the imaging product into the core content server was the support for annotations in our document viewer. The imaging product in its own imaging deployments has always had support for annotations around doing markups on top of documents that have come in through the imaging app. What we've done is merge that annotation capability into the document viewer in the content UI, the ADF content UI. So if you have a document in there, whether it came in as a PDF file or a Word document or came in through the imaging system, you now have the ability to do annotations and a lot of nice features there about being able to do markups as well as redactions. We also support the security model so that if you want to put restricted controls on a redacted document, you can do that so that only authorized people can see the original document, and then alternate versions of the document are redacted, and if you're not in a privileged group, all you can see is a redacted version. Even if you do a download, the PDF has the redactions burned in. So nice set of enhancements around the annotation viewer that's now part of the document viewer in the content UI in the 12C GA release. The other thing that we did in that same 12.2.1 GA release was we added upgraded current support for the back-end video transcoding system that the WebCenter content system uses. If you're using this, you probably were using Telestream's Flip Factory product, which is now kind of on no longer being sold on their price list and is available, still supported, but is basically their older technology. What we did is we added in the 12.2.1 release support for their latest project called Vantage, and it's a high-end transcoding product. Has a lot of capabilities on the back end if you're doing workflow automation, that type of thing. WebCenter Content 12c now supports native support for Vantage on the back end conversion if you're doing video conversions. As a reminder, if you aren't using video conversions or you thought about using it, WebCenter Content itself directly does not provide video transcoding support. We've always relied on third parties for that. So this last bullet here on this panel is pointing out the fact that while we also upgraded support for Telestream Vantage, we also added support for other third-party video transcoders to make them pluggable into the content system. The requirement here is that those transcoders have to be able to be command line driven, and they have to have, you know, kind of equivalent feature sets for what WebCenter Content is expecting. The one that we tested with fairly extensively, and again, it doesn't ship, but you're welcome to download it and use it directly in your implementation, is the open source transcoder called FFmpeg. It's quite robust, it has a lot of capabilities, and it works fairly well with our pluggable framework in terms of satisfying the requirements for the command line interface, etc. The other thing that we did, and this was a stepping stone again, working with our sister product, WebCenter Portal, was to take all the work that we've done with the content UI and make that available as a reusable, what WebCenter Portal now calls Content Manager Task Flow. And so basically this is a Chromeless version of the WebCenter Content UI that you can see here in this screen cap on the left side and the bottom part of the panel. This is effectively the same Content UI but running in a Chromeless headless version embedded as an ADF WebCenter Portal task flow on a larger portal page. You can, from WebCenter Portal, when you're invoking this Content Manager task flow, you can pick the starting folder and the enterprise library. You can pick whether it's going to be, you know, available for downloads or for view onlys, etc. So it really adds kind of the new Content UI capability to the WebCenter Portal pages in Portal 12.2.1. They continue to have their legacy task flows available in this initial GA release, so you have a choice. The Content Manager task flow really is a nice addition to the Portal product if you're using Portal as a front end for your larger applications to access content. So here's the update on DIS. Around the BP4 release, which was just before the 12.2.1 release, we added a fairly significant update to the DIS release. We added Office 2013 Backstage support. We provided a number of enhancements for better support for multiple email check-ins. We added some drag and drop support. We added some checks for duplicate file attachment. We added a show in browser command. Did some significant performance improvements, and then a latest set of certifications. Let me talk about the first one a little more in detail, 2013 Backstage support, you know, which is also available in 2016, the latest release of the Office product suite. What that basically did is give a more intuitive interface into the Office products for natively interacting with the WebCenter content. Prior to the Backstage support, if you've used the DIS product before, you're familiar with the WebCenter ribbon that gets installed as part of the DIS installation. Well, now with WebCenter Backstage support, it allows WebCenter content to interact in the natural flow of kind of the file open, save as operations in the product, in the Office Suite products, and you have WebCenter content as targets for those operations. So you can still use the DIS ribbon, just a little more natural for end users to interact with WebCenter content using kind of the native functions in the Office Suite where they'd expect WebCenter content to show up. Again, a lot of other enhancements that were done, some significant performance improvements about trying to go many of the synchronous calls to try and replace them with asynchronous calls. The latest versions of DIS are also supporting Windows 7 and Windows 10, those are all currently certified, as well as Office 316, 2016. Quick note about that, we get a lot of questions about Office 365 support, so which is basically a subscription model that Microsoft has. If you have an Office 365 subscription, you're entitled to the native desktop installations, which is what we support from a DIS perspective. We do not support the cloud versions of the Office products. All of our integrations are with the native desktop versions of the Office 365 subscription products that are available. Our mobile release that came out with the 12.2.1 GA release, we expanded mobile platform support to the latest OSs for iOS and Android. We had some enhanced look and feels, and we exposed revision history. The other thing that we did to make it a little more convenient for IT organizations to consume the mobile apps is we added support for Oracle's secure mobile workspace product. And basically this is a wrapper like Good Mobile, etc., that can wrap an application on a mobile device, Android or iOS, and give the IT organization control over how access the mobile app has to the back-end WebCenter content server. It can provide the VPN conduit. It can also provide restrictions on the content. It can provide remote wipe in case the mobile device is lost. So some nice features around the secure mobile workspace and interaction with the mobile app. If you have a different container mobile app management system that you want to use, it will probably work with our implementation of our mobile apps. We certify Oracle Secure Mobile Workspace, but to make this work, we make available up on OTN the unsigned version of these mobile apps, which is how they need to be wrapped by the containers. Another part of our 12C GA release, 12.2.1, was significant, and this is following in the bucket of infrastructure consolidation and improving operational efficiencies. Previously, when you deployed in the 11G product line the imaging product, that required standing up a separate set of managed servers in the product footprint. You were still using WebCenter content on the back end to store the content, but you still had a separate managed server to perform the imaging consolidation functions. What we did in our 12.2.1 release is we started the effort to consolidate that imaging functionality directly into the content server. So in the future, in this 12C1 release, if you needed to stand up the core imaging server, you can do that now by standing up just WebCenter content. You don't have to stand up a separate imaging server. We almost completed the entire consolidation. The one remaining piece of imaging functionality that we did not complete is targeted for our PS3 release, and I'll highlight that when I get to our PS3 release. But everything you see here, the first 5 bullets, was accomplished in the initial consolidation. If you're using the full imaging functionality, our directive to customers was really to wait for the PS3 release before you uptake 12C from an imaging perspective. You could still uptake 12C if you wanted the WebCenter 12C content server or enterprise capture servers, but for the full imaging, wait for PS3 was the directive. Couple of highlights on the 12.2.1 GA release for enterprise capture. If we have anybody using enterprise capture, we added some nice enhancements around documents, being able to view non-image documents in their native application. We removed the dependency for Java applets and added desktop application support, basically running the application outside the web browser. Some duplicate document or page management functions within batch handling. You have the ability to define multiple releases per release processes per client profile now, and added some additional view detailed document information about the non-image document. For the server side, we added documents attachment support, which is actually quite a nice feature. Let me see. Yep. And basically from an initial document that's imaged in, you can add attachments to that document now. And this gives the import processor the ability to import and associate those attachments to a document when processing the list file. Support for create and modification of the listing, viewing attachments, all the functionality you'd expect around the attachment, complete attachment functionality. Common use case around this is you scan in a document, and then after you put it through forms recognition process, what you want to attach is the XML converted interpretation of that document, and that can flow along the document as attachment now. Additional server features, I mentioned this one on the front end. I won't drill down on this one too much. We added support for external conversion programs. Let's move on to PS1. This was just released this summer. There's the refreshed platform certifications. You see there wasn't too much churn there. We did update to some of the latest versions of the OSs and latest versions of the browsers, the browser targets. For PS1, we added exposed trash support in the content UI. As I mentioned earlier, we had in the 12.2.1 release, we had added trash support for framework folders in the native UI and as a server-side set of functions. Well, now in the patch set 1 release, it's also exposed through the content UI. Manage attachments functionality, we did, again, in keeping with the theme of server-side or infrastructure consolidation. Previously, when you were using manage attachments for an EBS or PeopleSoft deployment, you had to stand up the imaging server to host that manage attachments functionality, even if that's all you were really interested in. With the patch set 1 release of 12C, you can now deploy the manage attachments functionality directly into the WebCenter content server by standing up just a WebCenter content server managed server. You don't have to stand up the imaging server anymore. And this is similar to the way the Siebel manage attachments capability has always worked. And again, as a reminder, manage attachments is a way of offloading the storage of attachments directly in your EBS, PeopleSoft, or Siebel instances and using the content server on the back end to manage those attachments. You store them actually in the content server instead of directly in those front-end systems. PS3, these are some of our high priority candidates that I was talking about under the Safe Harbor disclosure. In the 12C release, we did not release the standalone records management, physical records management server capability. And let me be clear there. Records management capability was released in the 12C GA release, the 12.2.1.0 release, as long as you were doing records management of content that was stored directly in the content server. There's a secondary architecture available in the WebCenter records management infrastructure where if you need to do physical records management, you're keeping track of paper copies of things, or you need to implement the adapters, that required standing up a second managed server that was dedicated to those functions in addition to the WebCenter content server. What we're doing in the patch set 3 release, again keeping with the theme of infrastructure consolidation, is to merge that standalone physical records management capability and the adapter integration functionality directly into the WebCenter content managed server. So again, WebCenter content managed server in the PS3 release will basically be your one-stop shop for deploying either imaging functionality, deploying records management, using annotations, all of that functionality you get by simply deploying a WebCenter content managed server. So that's going to reappear as consolidated functionality in the PS3 release. In terms of an infrastructure enhancement, kind of behind the scenes, we are going to be adding an optional indexing and search subsystem that will be available to customers. It's likely going to be available based on Elasticsearch, the open source search and indexing system. That may change based on our final implementation, But basically, one of our goals here is for customers who have high-end, high-volume content management needs, the Oracle text indexing system, especially if you're doing full-text indexing, can really reach kind of the limits of its performance once you get up into the multi-millions of documents being stored in the content server. So this is going to be an alternate. OTS will still be available, so if it's working for you and it's performing fine, then there's no need to change it. You will have an alternate indexing and search subsystem available in PS3 as an alternate way to do full-text indexing in your system. Last panel for PS3, the other thing we're doing is completing, this is really a stepping stone to completing the imaging server consolidation. An equivalent piece of functionality that we needed to bring over was save searches with metadata support. And again, this will be available in the content UI to give equivalent parity functionality with the imaging product in that regard. So again, using the WebCenter content server and this enhancement, this will take us to the completion of the imaging consolidation. Coming out, actually probably before the PS3 release as part of the patch set release, which is a nice way of saying it's actually available now, is that you have in our desktop integration suite an update available now that has large file support, as well as support for the annotations preview if you are using the ADF UI as the conduit for the desktop integration suite. And we're certifying the latest Office versions 2016, and we'll be certifying the Edge browser as part of this release as well. On the capture side, these are some of the roadmap features. We're still, again, around the safe harbor trying to decide if these are going to make the cut. A recap for what came out in PS1, which is available, is that we added JavaScript support for Twain metadata. So if you have a multifunction scan device that can supply additional metadata information beyond just the scanned image, you can write a JavaScript add-on to tap into that Twain metadata and inject that into the enterprise capture client so that metadata follows along with the scanned image. We also added client-side rubber band OCR support, so if you're doing OCR regioning, you can select the region with a mouse and then JavaScript to define that region and execute optical character recognition around that. And that's one of the candidates for PS3. Hopefully that'll make the cut when we release that version. Enterprise capture for 12.2.1.1, PS1 release that just came out this summer. We added Linux support and full platform support for the recognition processor, as well as new universal decoder settings around supporting the different barcode symbol formats, code 128, QR code, etc. So nice set of enhancements there around barcode support and recognition processor. Supporting all the platforms, Linux support was a big ask for quite a while, and that's there now with the PS1 release. Candidates for the PS3 release, we're looking at potentially adding event scripting support and dynamic thresholding support. Won't go into a lot of details there. Again, we're still locking down as to whether or not that's going to make the PS3 release. And then I think finally here for the import processor, two candidates for the PS3 release, document attachment support for email ingestment, and beyond what we already did in the patch set 1 release, as well as on the commit processor side, event scripting support and detailed auditing. All right, so there was a pretty big drink from the water hose for a recap of what we did in the 11G roadmap releases, the most recent 12C releases, and then what's coming as candidates for our upcoming 12C PS3 release. What I'd like to do now is just very quickly shift to staying with the focus on WebCenter, but talk about how some of the things we've done allow you to leverage the Oracle Cloud infrastructure that's been rolling out. So Oracle Cloud Services, I'm sure you've probably heard about the Documents Cloud Service. which gives you the ability to store documents in the cloud, and some of our other capabilities. I'm not here to talk so much about those directly, but rather how you can leverage some of those things in terms of your WebCenter content investment in terms of your existing infrastructure. One of the things we do have is if you want to make a shift to the cloud and still use your WebCenter content on-premise, you can use Oracle's Managed Cloud Services. That's basically Oracle consulting in the cloud to redeploy those applications against Oracle's cloud infrastructure. Not going to drill down too much there, just wanted to mention that. The other two big ones that I do want to mention strongly are WebCenter on IaaS and WebCenter on JCS. And basically what we've done is certify our WebCenter on-premise product line, the products that you're running today in your on-premise infrastructure, and certified them for deployment against Oracle's cloud infrastructure. In the case of IaaS, this is similar to Amazon Web Services, where we have many customers and partners that have deployed there. That's not officially supported, but it does run. But what we have done is certify Oracle's own cloud infrastructure for our products. And basically, this is where you're taking your on-premise license applications deployed by you and IT applications that are managed by you, but deploying on virtualized infrastructure in the cloud. Similarly, we've done the same thing for WebCenter content, the WebCenter suite as a whole, to be able to deploy it on JCS. And again, the only difference here between JCS and IaaS is that the JCS is a subscription license that comes with a WebLogic server license, and then you start with that as the starting point. Instead of you having to install WebLogic application server, WebCenter on JCS, you start with a WebLogic application server, and then you start your deployment from there. So it saves you having to stand up a WebLogic server application server. The other thing we've got to leverage the native cloud offerings is our hybrid cloud interfaces from our WebCenter content on-premise products into these cloud products. So it basically allows you to marry WebCenter content on-premise, which is a screen cap there, with things like the Documents Cloud Service. So that if you have use cases where you need to share documents externally, our hybrid adapters allow you to take a document out of WebCenter content on-premise, push it to the cloud, and then share that and use that in kind of collaborative hybrid environments where you may be sharing with external third-party customers or entities that you don't necessarily want to give access to your WebCenter content on-premise install. Again, some of these names may seem familiar, but we also have a third-party partner cloud solutions, a growing ecosystem of our partners that are building out some nice functionality around these hybrid as well as cloud offerings as well. So just a brief one-slide overview of IaaS, available now across our entire suite for content, portal, and sites. We have the full WebCenter content and imaging product line available on Oracle's Infrastructure as a Service Compute Cloud service. Not going to go into a lot of detail here. I basically just want to highlight that all of our products are supported on the WebCenter IaaS Compute Cloud infrastructure, and we have a roadmap for additional improvements. For WebCenter on JCS, similarly, we have content and portal available now for the 11.119 releases. We're certifying the 12C releases right now this summer and expect to have full support there as well. WebCenter Sites is going to be having their certification completed for JCS basically this month within the next few days here. In terms of the hybrid strategy, just a couple quick things here I'm going to highlight through. I mentioned those, so I'm going to skip over these slides so we can leave time for some Q&A here in the last 15 minutes. But basically, for WebCenter content and WebCenter portal and sites have their own adapters as well that they're going to be releasing, and those will be covered in their roadmaps when we have those. But similar to content, what we have for WebCenter content today in terms of our hybrid connector capability is that from a WebCenter content instance in your on-premise deployment, you can surface the Documents Cloud interface and move content to and from these two environments. So I could take a document from a Web Center content on-premise install and move it up to a Documents Cloud folder and then share that with an external entity. Likewise, if an external entity puts a document into their Documents Cloud folder, you can pull that back into Web Center content on-premise for the system of record. So this is Web Center Content's hybrid document cloud connector. Similarly for Enterprise Capture, it also has a hybrid connector so that if you're using Enterprise Capture to scan in documents, the normal repository though for those would be Web Center content on-premise. With the hybrid connector, Web Center Enterprise Capture can directly commit those scanned image documents to the Oracle Documents Cloud server, including metadata support for that import. So there you go, a quick overview of some of the hybrid and cloud initiatives that we have going on that really extend and help you leverage your existing Web Center content on-premise investments. Of course, there's all the rich cloud applications that you can look at as well, but I wanted to highlight some of the cloud initiatives that let you leverage your existing investment. So with that, I'm going to stop. That's the end of the presentation, and if we have some questions, I'll be glad to field those here.
Hi, Marcus. We have lots of questions, actually.
I'm sorry?
We have lots of questions, actually, from our audience, so thank you for the detailed presentation. It looks like it spurred a lot of thought.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go ahead and dig into our questions. The first question is, I've been having some ADF issues with the different versions of Internet Explorer. Has anything been done to resolve this issue in newer releases?
Without having more details, we've tried to stay current, as you saw there, on the versions that we're supporting. So was the front end of that question relating to EBS? I'm sorry, could you repeat that question again?
The question is, I'm having ADF is having issues with the different versions of Internet Explorer compatibility view settings. Has anything been done to resolve this issue in newer releases?
Yeah, so we have worked on that. With Internet Explorer 11 release, that is the kind of the terminal release of Internet Explorer that Microsoft is supporting before they hop over to Edge. So we've hopefully addressed those. If you're still having issues, that's probably with some of the earlier versions of Web Center content. We've tried to remove the need for having those compatibility settings in our latest versions of 12c so that you can go native and avoid those. However, we do understand that some of those compatibility settings can affect some of the earlier interactions. So Internet Explorer 11 and the latest versions of 12c is the general answer. If that's not landing in your kind of target area, then that'll need to be worked through an SR with customer support.
Great, thank you. Another question, will there be an 11.1.1.10 release, or is .9 the last patch set for 11G?
11.1.1.9 is the last official patch set for 11G. There will be, patches on top of .9, BP releases, but there will not be a .10.
Excellent, thank you. Another question from our audience, is DIS licensed to be used with Web Center content, or does it require separate licensing?
No, DIS comes with either a Web Center content license or a Web Center Universal Content Management license. Those are basically two SKUs that you can get Web Center content functionality. So DIS comes with both of those. So if you have a Web Center content license or you have a Web Center UCM, Universal Content Management license, you're entitled to use DIS. You're also entitled to use the mobile apps.
Great. We have a couple of questions here around PS2 and PS3. So one of our users asked if they missed something in the information that you shared. What happened to PS2 12.2.2.2? Why skip from PS1 to PS3?
Let me see. So on that, I thought at first he was asking about the 12C PS2 release, but you mentioned 11G PS2.
No, this one is specific to 12C. I'm sorry.
Okay, good. Yeah, so there is going to be a PS2, and it's targeted probably for around October of this year, but it is purely scoped around defect fixes or bug fixes. There will be no feature-bearing, enhancements, cool enhancements that you can look forward to in that PS3 release, which is why I left it out of my PM roadmap. So it is there. You are correct. I probably should put a placeholder in there, but it'll be kind of a boring panel. But basically, it'll just say, bug fixes. There won't be any enhancements. So PS1 came out this summer. PS2 is coming out in the fall. PS3 is targeted for, second or third calendar quarter next year.
Excellent, thank you. An additional question is, are there any plans for Elasticsearch or Solar SOLR support?
I think I alluded to that in my 12C roadmap presentation, that in our PS3 release, we are, as I mentioned, considering coming out as a very strong, priority candidate to provide an alternate indexing and search subsystem. So that could be very likely based on Elasticsearch Solar implementation.
Excellent. One additional question that we received, since we're talking about future releases and upcoming announcements, would be around Oracle Open World and any specific content or sessions that you would recommend as part of the program for individuals who are interested in learning more about this area.
Yeah, so I'll be doing a similar roadmap presentation. That is, the WebCenter content vision and strategy session, where I'll basically be, walking through this roadmap again. There might be some additional detail in that one. The other session is we have a dedicated breakout session around the WebCenter on-premise, on-the-cloud initiatives that I briefly touched on here. We'll have a complete session on that as well. So you have two choices there. And of course, if you can't attend those, you can always drop by the demo grounds and talk to one of the product managers. I'll be manning the demo grounds booth if you have a specific question you want to raise.
Great, thank you. One last question here is, WebCenter Enterprise Capture is currently using Java Applet. Is there any plans to release the WebCenter Enterprise Capture without Java Applet?
Yeah, that actually has already occurred in one of the latest 12C releases. The 12.2.1 release removed that applet dependency, and actually I should also point out that for WebCenter content as well, with only one or two exceptions, I think, the half a dozen or so applets that WebCenter content has, those have also been removed in this patch set 1 release that came out this summer as well.
Great.
And the technique that we did there is basically those are now launchable basically as applications from the web browser. They're not Java applets, the old style. We're actually using the application wrapper technology so that they can launch directly out of the browser and become their own application.
Thank you. We did get one more follow-up question about the Elasticsearch. Will Elasticsearch also replace WebCenter portal search integration with WebCenter content for documents?
No, I was really not talking about any kind of federated search replacement. This is really only talking about the integrated indexing and search engine that comes with WebCenter content. So portal will not necessarily be doing an equivalent replacement. And as a footnote there, that's kind of leading into so what's going on with Secure Enterprise Search. Secure Enterprise Search, which is what Portal kind of uses in that federated search, will continue to ship with the products. As a standalone product, it's been pulled off the price list. So again, all the work that WebCenter content is doing around search is really around the integrated search engine itself. If you want to use something else, you can. I mean, WebCenter content does have its crawler interface, which Secure Enterprise Search does use, but you could use that as a plug point to do a custom integration if you wanted something other than SES.
That actually answers the follow-up question that came in relation to that, so thank you for answering both of those.
I guessed.
Perfect. Well, it looks like we've answered all of the questions that have come in from our audience for today. So I'd like to take a moment and thank Marcus for sharing today's presentation and also for answering all the questions from our community. Thank you, Marcus.
Quite welcome. It was a pleasure being here.
Additionally, I would like to encourage all attendees to make note of any upcoming webinars and take advantage of all of the archives of previous webinars on demand on the IOUG website, including today's webinar, which will be available within 24 hours of the close of today's broadcast. You'll find that in our resource center. Thank you to all of our attendees for joining us for today and for sharing your thoughtful questions. There is a brief survey that will pop up on the screen as you exit the webinar, and we would ask that you share your feedback with us so we can continue to improve our educational offerings for you. And we hope to also connect with you while you are at Open World, whether it is in one of the WebCenter sessions or visiting with us in the IOUG kiosk. Thank you again, everyone, for attending today's webinar. Have a great rest of your day.